Good morning. I'm Matt Driskill, editor of Asian Aviation Magazine and AsianAviation.com. Welcome to the latest In Conversation, sponsored by Metrojet of Hong Kong. Today we're talking to Jared Lee. He's the Vice President for Southeast Asia and South Asia at Qatar Airways. Jared, welcome to In Conversation. Thanks for joining me.
Thank you, Matt. It's a pleasure to be here today. How are you doing?
Doing fine. And first of all, full disclosure, as we were talking about earlier, I'm a silver member in Qatar's loyalty program. My family and I, we fly the airline frequently, although we've been grounded for the last year. Although my wife actually flew Qatar to Paris to go see her family over the holidays, so she got some miles in that time. Jared, give us a quick tour. Last year, of course, COVID basically shut down international aviation, which is the bread and butter for Qatar Airways and other Middle Eastern carriers. For a while there, everything was down, and the airline also suffered from sort of the double whammy with you had sort of a neighborhood spat going on with the other countries nearby, but I think that's been lifted since then. But tell us how the airline dealt with things last year, and then we can talk about this year later on.
Sure, Matt. So, the COVID-19 pandemic is really unprecedented for the industry, or at least during my career in the aviation industry, which spanned over 25 years. And you've rightly pointed out that many airlines were affected, and not just airlines. I think the whole chain of the travel industry was impacted. Hotels, restaurants, any business that relied on tourism and travel was severely impacted, and some had to succumb to financial duress, unfortunately. And while most airlines had suspended their operations, I think Qatar Airways was one of the very few airlines who continued flying. This is because we're committed to our mission of taking people home safely. And we never reduced our capacity below 30% of what we used to operate pre-COVID. So during that period, we flew a lot of charter flights. We flew a lot of stranded people home, mostly repatriation of foreign nationals. We work closely with embassies, and we've taken over 3.1 million passengers since the onset of the pandemic. And our route network continued to operate to our key destinations, and our customers and passengers could rely on us because our schedules were reliable. We didn't put in schedules and later frequently cancelling them. So we had that reliability to the customers. And we've also reinstated already some destinations and relaunched some of the destinations that we had announced but did not fly to yet. And some of them include like San Francisco. We've also recently started Seattle in the USA. So I think Qatar Airways has shown its resilience during the COVID-19 period. And we continue to provide that reliability to our customers. And we are continuing to expand from where we are now, which is already over 120 destinations.
Okay. And at the end of last year, actually in November, around that time when the vaccines were starting to make their appearance, everybody said, great, that's going to be great for the industry. And then we've got things like IATA's Travel Pass, the Commons Project, Commons Pass, some of the digital health certificates, so-called digital health certificates. IATA, other associations, even with the vaccine rollout, because it's actually been a little bit slow in some areas of the world. But IATA is saying that travel really is not going to pick up until at least the middle of the year or end of the year. Business travel might take even longer. Is that what you're seeing? Is that what Qatar is planning for?
That's a good question, Matt. I think many analysts have predicted that travel won't be back to its pre-COVID levels for at least the next 2 to 3 years. And we certainly hope that it will be sooner. However, I think it's a bit too early to tell, because even with the vaccine being rolled out across the world, you can see that the adoption rate by countries to inoculate the population largely depends on whether they were able to get sufficient vaccine for the population and the time frame which they're going to receive it. So it's not the case that everyone gets vaccines for every single person in the country overnight. And secondly, I think you will see that a lot of the travel restrictions have been put in place depending on the level of control that the governments have over infections, both within the community and imported cases. So countries which are able to more effectively control the local infections would be more confident, I feel, that to open up earlier, and if they can get their population inoculated sooner, are most likely the countries that are going to be more comfortable to open up.
Let me jump in there, and I want to come back to that in a little bit about the passenger experience and quarantines and things like that.
Right.
One of the things I wanted to ask is that Qatar and other airlines as well, Cathay Pacific, Singapore Air, everybody's been doing a lot of marketing about safety on board, wearing PPE. Same for the airport in Doha, great airport by the way. Is that kind of marketing working not just for your airline, but for your sister and brother airlines, your peers in the industry? And the reason I ask is because a lot of airlines are sort of hoarding their cash. I mean, there's a lot of cash burn going on in the industry. But Qatar really seems to be focused on marketing, really getting its brand out there. Is that helping to restore confidence, do you think?
Well, to answer your question, first I got to explain that this is not purely for marketing reasons. We do what is necessary to ensure the safety of both our passengers and crew, obviously. And you got to do that in order to give travelers the confidence to travel, right? Whether it's for essential or repatriation travel. And we got to tell people about it, right? What safety measures we are taking to ensure that we minimize the risk of infection when traveling with Qatar Airways. So I think it's one thing to do what's necessary to invest in the technology as well as the measures and protocols that we have to put in place. And secondly, you've got to communicate it effectively to your customers to say that, look, I think we've put in all the measures that's feasible to ensure your safety. So I think that's where the investments are for. It's not purely a marketing kind of a pitch,
Well, no, I understand, and because actually, I mean, like I said, my wife recently flew Qatar to Paris, so she had a brief layover in Doha and all of that, and she actually, even with, she had her own face mask and everything, but the airline gave her a face shield and a glass of champagne in business class. So she was very happy. And when everybody left her alone, she could drink her champagne in peace without the mask on. But, she thought it was very good, all the precautions that were being taken. And I just want to ask, I mean, it's kind of a problem, with the quarantines, the precautions that have to be taken, the PCR tests or other kinds of tests that have to be done pre-departure, so on and so forth. I mean, that's really going to affect the industry for a long time to come. Do you see these kinds of measures remaining in place once this latest pandemic is sort of tamped down? Are these kinds of, I can't remember what someone called it, generation sanitation, where people are going to count on these kinds of disinfectant measures on board all the time. Or do you see that continuing past this pandemic?
Yeah, I think, Matt, some of these measures will continue to be in place. Number one, because I think the COVID virus is not just going to go away or disappear, right? It's going to be around like the flu virus. And secondly, I think it's worth mentioning that with all the efforts that we've put in, we've actually found that 99.988% of our passengers actually travel COVID-free. So the risk of infection from traveling with all these measures in place is really, really low. And I think it's very reassuring. So if you were to take any of these measures away before the immunity, so-called herd immunity, comes in, it might have a negative effect on confidence of travelers. So I think some of these are here to stay with us. And as you have seen, Skytrax has already started even rating airports for COVID-19 safety. And Hamad Airport actually earned a 5-star rating for that. So
Yep.
I think some of these are here to stay, and people want to know before they travel in the future, how safe is the airport? How safe is the airline protocol when they are handling passengers, when they are in contact with the crew? Do you have contactless check-in technology? Things like that. So I think some of these are going to stay with us for the foreseeable future.
Let me follow up on that because I think I just saw Qatar issued a press release today about contactless technology. Is that correct?
Yeah.
And what was that about? Can you briefly explain that? And then we're going to have to take a break after that.
Yeah, basically, I think we try to minimize, human contact and also contact on surfaces which might have risk of exposure. So, for example, our in-flight entertainment system now have the capability to allow you to use your own mobile device. You can link your own mobile device so that you don't have to touch the screen, even though we have very stringent disinfection protocols on board. So this is an example of, going beyond what's necessary, right? Anticipating what the customers would need and giving them what is going to reassure them that it's safe to travel with Qatar Airways.
Yeah, I tell you, I appreciate all the contactless things and all of that, but I really like the big screen. When I get to fly business class from time to time, when I use my miles to upgrade, I like the big screen and all that. It's fun. Anyway, Jerry, we need to take a quick break here for just a minute to hear from our sponsor, Metrojet of Hong Kong. We'll be right back after this.
We're going to have the crown jewels of Asia, and I promise you we're going to have the nicest and busiest business aviation hangar in the region.
And we're back. Jared, I want to switch gears for a little bit here on the fleet side of things, which is, we cover aviation, obviously, so we're very interested in that. The manufacturers, Airbus, Boeing, ATR, everybody else, airlines have been deferring orders or canceling them outright. In some cases, they're looking to reorient their fleets, maybe away from so many wide bodies to narrow bodies. I'd like to ask about Qatar and what your plans are. I think you've got, last time I checked, this may have changed, you had 170 planes on order, but your CEO, who is, shall we say, a very colorful and interesting guy, he said that you'd be retiring the A330 fleet and a large part of the A320 fleet and probably the 777 fleet. And he's also been very vocal about Boeing and Airbus that they really need to step up and work with the airlines or they would see a lot more canceled orders. Can you give us an idea of what your fleet plans are and where things stand at the moment?
Yes, sure, Matt. So as an airline, Qatar Airways is no different that we continuously assess our passenger and cargo needs or demand, and we try to operate the most appropriate and most efficient aeroplane for the route. So now, because of the drastic drop in demand on most routes, in fact, I think on all routes, we had to ground our Airbus 380 most of all because of the capacity of that aeroplane. It's just not environmentally and economically justifiable to operate an aircraft that is so large. And speaking of aircraft orders, yeah, you're right. We're still taking delivery of new aeroplanes, and we just took delivery of 3 Airbus 350s just in October last year. and we received our 53rd Airbus 350 and 3 new B777 cargo planes in January. So we're still continuing to take some of the aircraft orders as and when we assess that there is demand for the capacity that we're going to get. And we'll continually adjust that as things unfold.
Any couple of things. One, I love the A380, and it was from a passenger perspective, it was a great plane to fly on. Again, especially if you're in business class. I think I only got a chance to fly first on it one time, and sorry, but that was with a different airline. But it's sad to see the A380 go. I know that maybe a few years from now there'll still be some flying, but it's sad to see that go. But I wanted to follow up on that too. I mean, it's pretty much it looks like the 787 and the A350 are probably going to be the workhorses of the industry from now on. Would you agree with that?
It certainly looks that way.
Yeah.
I think it has got a good balance between passenger and cargo capacity, number one. And secondly, I think it is fuel efficiency wise, a much better aeroplane to fly, especially for mid to long haul routes. And thirdly, I think you will not require bigger capacity than that for the foreseeable future. I think travel is going to come back gradually. There's not going to be a sharp V-shaped recovery. So I think your assessment is probably right. I tend to agree with it.
You mentioned cargo a lot, and I actually had that kind of slipped my mind a little bit. How has the cargo side of the business been for Qatar? For everybody else, it's been good. It's been sort of the bright spot for every airline, but the problem is because of not as many passenger planes flying, you're losing that belly hold capacity. Has Qatar done anything like the Praetors where you've converted the passenger deck, or at least part of the passenger deck, to be able to carry cargo? And how's that side of the business been for you?
Okay, I think firstly, to get an idea of how much cargo capacity has been impacted globally, I think it was reported that around 70% of air cargo capacity actually came from belly hold space passenger flights. So with most airlines reducing their flights drastically, you've taken away a significant chunk of cargo capacity for global trade, movement of goods. So I think that itself presented opportunities for airlines who have the capacity and the right fleet type to take advantage of that situation. And I think this enabled airlines to still operate some routes, many routes, in fact, even if there is no full capacity demand for the passenger seats. So as far as we're concerned, I think some of our flights obviously carry a very good mix of cargo and passengers, and we're able to continue flying because of that.
So, I mean, overall, is it up, down, about the same, or can you give us a percentage figure on that at all, or do you?
Yeah, I think cargo is obviously contributing a higher percentage than what it used to in the past when passenger demand was very robust. So I think the balance obviously has shifted with more revenue streams coming from the cargo side.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Again, if you're like me, you've been listening to a lot of webinars over the past year, probably more than you want to. And if they're in the U.S. or Europe, it's always at an inconvenient time for guys like us who live in Singapore. Everybody seems to agree, though, that the industry is probably going to be smaller in the years to come. There may be fewer routes. There may be fewer airplanes produced. There may be fewer airports that are expanded or built. I'm curious to know, how does Qatar fit into that, considering, I mean, you've got some good competitors. Qatar is a great airline, but you've got some good competitors with Emirates and with Etihad. And I'm just curious how Qatar, where it sees it fitting in, say, 3 years from now, 2024, when hopefully pre-COVID levels come back. And the reason I ask this is because it's very interesting. There's an old saying, never let a good crisis go to waste. And I think Rex Airlines in Australia is actually an example of that. they're actually buying planes. They're investing in jets. They're trying to take on Qantas and the domestic Qantas and Virgin in Australia on the domestic side down there. Is this a chance for Qatar to expand its market share? What are you thinking? What's your thinking on that?
Well, the industry is certainly smaller than before the pandemic, and I believe that a few airlines will emerge stronger and leaner once this crisis abates. And the investment we have made so far into our product, into our schedules, will ensure that Qatar Airways will be one of the stronger airlines in the future. And you can see it from evidence that we are one of the first airlines to fully refund passengers, our customers, on their tickets. We have one of the most generous booking and cancellation policies, so that we give our customers the confidence and the flexibility to buy the tickets, even if they might not travel or they might change their minds. So I think with all these efforts that we've put in to... Can I reword?
Yeah, no, just keep talking.
Okay. So all these efforts that we have put in the interest of our customers, I believe that we will have the confidence of our customers in our product for the future.
Yeah, I think actually, I mean, you made a good point about refunds as well, because I think Air New Zealand ran into a big problem with that. And not just Air New Zealand, but other airlines as well, where they were saying, okay, you get future credit or you get vouchers, and people are saying, no, I want my money back. So that is a big thing. Let me move on, because we're running a little bit out of time here. I want to get to these last couple of questions. Tony Tyler, who's the former head of IATA, I was listening to him speak on a webinar, and he said that he wanted airlines, in order to deal with things in the COVID-19 pandemic, but also things like financial crisis, 2008, 2009, all of these difficult times, that airlines needed to be more entrepreneurial, that they needed to take chances in order to survive and prosper in the days ahead. And I think part of his thing was that get away from the algorithms that determine so many things in the aviation industry, whether it's pricing or seat assignments or whatever, and become more of a I guess a people-oriented business, I think is maybe what he was trying to say. Does Qatar agree with that? I mean, would you consider Qatar Airways an entrepreneurial company?
Well, it's my personal view that in any business, one should always take an entrepreneurial approach. This, to me, means being agile and nimble and constantly adjusting to the market needs. So, for example, we continued flying when most airlines had drastically reduced their schedules or grounded the entire fleet. And then we came out with the most generous booking conditions, and we even gave away 100,000 free tickets to medical frontliners to show our appreciation for the effort, the risk they have taken to safeguard other people from falling victims to the COVID pandemic. So it is things like this that I think would keep any business competitive. So I would say that, yeah, I tend to agree with the Tony Tyler's view. If I think that's who you quoted.
Yep. Okay. Finally, Jared, I like to end these interviews on a bright note if we can. Again, it's been a bad year for the industry overall. And as you talked about at the beginning, not just airlines, not just airports, but everybody involved in the whole travel value chain, hotels, car rental companies, everybody. Is there something that we can look at? We've got vaccines on the way. Frontline aviation workers are getting vaccinated in addition to healthcare workers and things like that. Is there a bright spot for Qatar Airways that we can look at? Is there something positive you're looking forward to in the coming year?
Certainly, as the saying goes, right? There's always a silver lining in every cloud. So I believe that travel will gradually return, and people will want to travel again, because I think the crisis itself has shown us how important human contact is. People were separated from their loved ones, from their family, from their work colleagues, students from their teachers, and many other cases, right? So I think these restrictions have made people realize how important it is to be able to travel freely. And when that freedom is taken away, do you realize that how valuable it is to you? So I personally think that our desire to travel will not dissipate. And I look forward to going back to the skies again. And I'm sure it's the same for you, right, Matt?
Yeah, I've been on the ground too long. I'm ready. I missed my vacation in France this summer with my wife's family, and so yeah, I'm ready to go and brave the airports and the PCR tests and all that. So hopefully I'll be able to go soon. Jared Lee, Vice President for Southeast Asia and South Asia at Qatar Airways. Thanks for joining me in conversation.
Thank you, Matt, for your time.